They called it a fairy tale wedding. But I remember the lie beneath her smile. The way she looked at him when she thought I wasn't watching. The silence in my father's voice the day before he died. People say betrayal feels like a knife. They're wrong. It's slower. Colder. And sometimes, you don't bleed until it's too late. The morning light made everything look honest. Sterling Tower gleamed in the glass of my penthouse window. 80 stories of ambition and quiet war. From up here, the city looked peaceful, like nothing could fall apart. Sophia stirred behind me, perfect, composed even in sleep. Her arm draped across the silk sheets, fingers curled like she was still reaching for something. Maybe me. Maybe something else. I told myself I was lucky. That I'd won. But luck has a way of sounding like a lie when it comes too easy. My father used to say, a man is most blind when he thinks he sees everything. He told me that over coffee the day I introduced him to Sophia. She wore white that morning. Not bridal white, strategic white. The kind that makes men feel safe. He smiled politely. Asked her questions. After she left, he gave me the look. The one that came before every warning. Be careful with this one, he said. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. I laughed it off. Told him he was being overprotective. Bitter, maybe. He didn't push. Just leaned back and said, love should bring clarity, not confusion. I should have listened. By all accounts, my life was golden. VP of Business Development at Sterling Corp by 30. Engaged to the most beautiful woman in any room. Half the board saw me as the CEO in waiting. The other half saw me as a threat. But I didn't care. Because I had Sophia. And when she looked at me, I believed in the future we built together. Or, I believed in the version she showed me. The cracks didn't show right away. They never do. The first came wrapped in champagne and applause. A surprise engagement party Sophia threw at a rooftop bar I'd never heard of, filled with people I barely knew. Her smile was wide, camera ready. She kissed my cheek like we'd practiced it. Everything felt choreographed, and somehow, I'd missed the rehearsal. When I thanked her later, she just said, "Image is everything, Ethan. You get that, right?" She kissed me again before I could answer. I nodded, but something in me blinked. Sterling was no safer. Lucas Grayson, my old classmate turned corporate rival, was already circling. He played the long game. Smooth. Friendly. Deadly. We kept things polite. Professional. But every handshake with him felt like a test. The higher I climbed, the more I felt eyes at my back. Smiling eyes. Waiting. Sophia always said I overthought things. Relax, she'd whisper into my ear. You're always trying to solve people like puzzles. She wasn't wrong. But puzzles don't lie. People do. That night, my father called. Just to check in. We hadn't spoken much since the engagement. He hated pretense. Sophia made him uncomfortable, though he never said it outright. How's the kingdom? He asked. Golden, I said. Better than I deserve. There was a pause. You still know how to tell the difference between gold and gold-plated? I smiled. He always spoke in riddles when he was worried. I'm fine, Dad. You will be, he said. Just remember, even the strongest tower can crack at the foundation. I didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. But I would. Soon. Even as she walked down the aisle, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was performing for someone else. They called her breathtaking. The kind of woman men wrote songs about. Ivory silk trailing behind her, veil catching soft light, and yet, her eyes scanned the crowd like she was searching for a different face. Not mine. We stood beneath a hand-built arch of white roses and money. I said my vows first. Simple. Honest. Mine. She smiled at the right moments, tilted her head just so, then delivered her vows like a seasoned actress. Flawless diction. Beautiful pacing. The kind of speech that made strangers tear up. But not once did her voice break. When it came time to exchange gifts, she reached for the watch. The same one my father had left me, back when time still meant something. She fastened it onto my wrist slowly, her fingers cool and practiced. "You'll never lose track of what matters," she whispered. At the time, I thought she meant us. Later, I'd wonder if she meant control. The applause came too loud, too long. Like everyone was clapping for a performance they didn't quite believe in, but needed to. By the time we reached the reception, the illusion had thickened. Lights bathed everything in gold. Sophia floated through the ballroom like she'd been born to belong there. I watched her from the edge of the room, champagne untouched. She moved with ease, laughing, leaning in close, hand on someone's shoulder, face just inches from theirs. She was magnetic. Distant. And then I saw him. Lucas Grayson. Leaning against the far column, sleeves rolled, drink in hand. His eyes weren't on the stage, or the guests, or the speeches. They were on her. He didn't smile. Didn't blink. Just watched. And for a moment, just one, she looked back. It was small. A flicker. But enough. Her body stilled, the corners of her mouth softened, and then, just as quickly, she turned away. I started walking toward them, instinct tight in my chest, but someone called my name. A board member. One of my father's old allies. I turned for half a second. When I looked back, they were both gone. Later that night, in the hotel suite, she was quiet. Unwrapping her earrings. Pulling pins from her hair one by one, like shedding armor. I sat on the edge of the bed, tie loosened, cufflinks off. Still wearing the watch. "Did you enjoy the night?" I asked. She didn't look up right away. Just kept wiping makeup from her cheek with delicate, practiced swipes. Then she met my eyes in the mirror. "It was perfect," she said. Her voice was gentle. Her smile was soft. But her eyes, they were already somewhere else. And somewhere between her smile and silence, I started to wonder if I'd just married a stranger. Paris was her idea. She called it romantic, nostalgic, the perfect beginning. But when we arrived, it felt like I'd stepped into someone else's memory. She knew the backstreets too well. The cafes. The concierge at the hotel. Even the waiter at the rooftop restaurant smiled like he'd seen her before, not with me. At night, she kissed me like a habit. Not passion. Not hunger. Just repetition, as if she was playing the part of a wife already bored of the role. I told myself I was overthinking it. Jet lag, maybe. Pressure. Nerves. But then the text started. One night, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up beside me. No name. Just initials. LG. I didn't touch it. Just stared. One new message. Then another. She came out wrapped in a towel, humming. Saw the screen. Paused. Then flipped the phone over, face down. "You okay?" she asked, drying her hair like nothing happened. I nodded. Lied. The next day, I followed her. She said she was going to the bookstore around the corner. Said she wanted to browse old poetry. I waited 5 minutes. Then walked the opposite way and doubled back. She wasn't at the bookstore. She was in a quiet cafe, 2 blocks down, sitting across from him. Lucas. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. His hand was on hers. Her smile was real. She leaned in like the world around them didn't exist. And when she laughed, it was the sound I hadn't heard in weeks. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I walked away. Took the long way back. Let the silence harden into something sharper than rage. Back at the hotel, she greeted me with a kiss. Told me about a beautiful book she almost bought. I smiled. Told her I was glad. Slipped the watch from my wrist and placed it gently on the nightstand. She asked why. I said I didn't want to track time tonight. But really, I just didn't want to see how fast it was all falling apart. She didn't ask why I'd gone quiet. Which meant, she already knew. We flew back to New York in separate rows. Not physically, she was right beside me, flipping through a fashion magazine. But emotionally, the gap was miles wide. She leaned her head on my shoulder mid-flight, whispering, "I'm glad you're not the jealous type." I didn't flinch. Didn't look at her. Just watched the clouds tear themselves apart. Back home, the apartment smelled like oranges. She'd ordered diffusers from some Parisian boutique, said the scent was calming, intimate. But all I could think about was how it masked things. We didn't fight. We didn't talk. Not about that. The real betrayal didn't come from what she did. It came from how well she pretended she hadn't. 2 days later, she left early for a gallery meeting. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the untouched side she slept on. That's when I opened her laptop. Not out of revenge. Out of survival. Photos. Videos. Voice notes labeled only with dates. But one folder was password protected. So I searched her cloud backup instead. And there it was. I played it. At first, just static. Then, their voices. Lucas. Sophia. They were in our apartment. Laughing. Whispering. Her voice low, soft. "Ethan still thinks I married him for love." Silence. Then Lucas. "Give it 6 months. He'll hand over the shares himself." She laughed. Not cruel. Not evil. Just effortless. Like betrayal was her second language. I closed the laptop. Sat in the dark. And let the silence say what I couldn't. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't angry. I was awake. I left her a note that morning. Not to confront her. Just to see how she'd lie. Went for a run. Back by 9. Love you. She replied with a heart emoji and a photo. A mirror selfie. One hand brushing her hair, the other holding coffee. Wearing the sweater I gave her after Berlin. No trace of guilt. No shadow behind the eyes. Just practiced intimacy. I didn't run. I sat in the car 3 blocks down, staring at the apartment through the rearview. When she left, she wore heels. No meeting starts before 9 in heels like that. That's when I stopped thinking of her as my wife. She became a problem I needed to solve. Not destroy. Not punish. Just reveal. At work, I laughed at jokes. Signed contracts. Shook hands. I played the man she needed me to be. Because now, I needed her to stay unaware. When I got home, she was in the kitchen, hair tied, wine glass half full, playing music we used to slow dance to. "Missed you today," she said. I kissed her temple, opened a bottle. Sat down with her. Listened to her spin stories about curators and clients and rising offers. I didn't ask if Lucas was one of them. Didn't need to. She mentioned his name casually, like a coworker, like background noise. And when she wasn't looking, I placed the engraved watch, the one I'd stopped wearing, right on the kitchen counter. Deliberately. Facing her. She glanced at it. And blinked just a second too long. Noticed. But said nothing. That night, we made love. Not out of passion. But out of preservation. I let her believe I still belonged to her. That nothing had changed. But I already knew how the story would end. I just wasn't ready to write it down yet. She had this way of folding towels like they mattered. Corners aligned, colors sorted by shade, everything soft and stupidly symmetrical. I stood in the hallway, watching her. Thinking about how long she'd practiced that version of herself. "Need anything?" she asked, without turning. "No," I said. But I stepped closer anyway. She smelled like the perfume I'd bought her last winter. Jasmine, fig, the hint of musk. It used to undo me. Now it just made me wonder if he liked it too. That afternoon, I opened her drawer when she was in the shower. Not to find anything. Just to remind myself she was capable of hiding. Buried under scarves and museum lanyards was a black velvet pouch. Inside, the new perfume. I recognized the brand, niche, expensive, unfamiliar. Not something she'd pick herself. I left it exactly where I found it. Except, I swapped the cap. It wouldn't break anything. Wouldn't even be noticed. Just misalign her version of perfect. At dinner, she leaned in, kissed my neck. "You smell like memory," she said. I smiled. "Is that a good thing?" She laughed into her wine. Didn't answer. That night, she reached for the velvet pouch. Stopped mid-motion. Frowned, then grabbed something else. It was nothing. A flicker. A pause. But I watched it settle under her skin. I was learning the art of fracture. Not with noise. Not with proof. With weightless pressure. Small, invisible shifts. Until the entire thing collapsed under the illusion of its own balance. I stopped meeting her eyes. Not out of anger, but to see how long it would take her to notice. Some nights, I'd sit on the rooftop long after she fell asleep. Just watching the city dull itself. The way the lights blurred. How even motion lost meaning after a while. It used to be our place. Now it was insulation. She made us breakfast that morning. Said she dreamed of a forest. Woke up crying and didn't know why. I told her I was happy she still dreamed. She blinked, halfway through her sentence. Smiled like she didn't understand. Then finished pouring the coffee. Later that day, I found her watching me from the hallway mirror. Not directly. Just observing. As if trying to solve an equation where one variable had changed. "Are you okay?" she asked. I said, "You look tired." She laughed once, low. Then turned away. That night, she came up to the rooftop. Wrapped herself in that gray sweater I used to love on her. "Do you ever think we broke something?" Her voice was quieter than the wind. I didn't answer. She sat beside me anyway. Pulled her knees to her chest, like she used to when things felt uncertain. "I miss how it was." A pause. "I miss you." I nodded. Not cruelly. Just, with distance. Because she wasn't saying it to me. Not really. She was saying it to the idea of me. The man who used to reach for her without needing a reason. By the time she fell asleep beside me, I'd already made the decision. To start pulling back, gently. Not in a way she'd fight. But enough that she'd feel it. In the quiet. In the warmth that never quite returned. She started staying in the bath longer. Doors locked. Music on. But sometimes, I'd still hear her cry. Not the heavy kind. The slow, breathless kind you think no one will notice. I never knocked. I just waited, until the light under the door disappeared. One afternoon, I left my watch on the coffee table. The engraved one she gave me, "For every second you chose me." She picked it up. Turned it over in her hands. Then put it down like it burned. We didn't talk about it. But that night, she asked if I was happy. Not in an accusatory way. Just, fragile. Like maybe she wasn't sure I'd lie anymore. I said, "Are you asking if I still love you?" She blinked. "No. I know you do, in your way." Then she laughed. Too quickly. God, that sounded cold, didn't it? I told her it didn't. It did. A few days later, she booked a solo weekend trip. Left a note on the fridge. "Need air. Back Sunday." She'd never done that before. Didn't text. Didn't call. Just vanished, politely. I stared at the note for a long time. Not because of what it said. But because she hadn't written my name on it. Not even E. Not even you. Just nothing. The house was quiet without her. Too quiet to sleep. I poured a drink I didn't finish. Left the rooftop door open. Stood there until dawn. Wondering if this was what she wanted, the distance. And if maybe, she finally meant it. She came back on a Sunday. Like she said. No dramatic entry. Just the sound of keys in the door and the click of her shoes on hardwood. I didn't rush to meet her. Didn't pretend to be asleep, either. We just stood there. Like strangers waiting for the elevator. "You okay?" I asked. Neutral. Measured. Yeah, she nodded. Just needed space. I opened my mouth to say something. What kind of space? From what? But all that came out was, cool. She laughed, sharp and soft. God. You always do that. Do what? Make distance sound polite. She unpacked slowly that night. Placed her scarf on the hook, like she used to. But the perfume was different. Not hers. Or maybe just not the one I remembered. That scent, it lingered in the hallway. Too long. Like it had something to say. She sat on the couch beside me. Close, but not touching. Looked at the muted TV. I thought about us while I was gone, she said. Her voice was small. Careful. Oh? I didn't look at her. Yeah. It's funny. I used to think we were broken because of what happened. But maybe. She stopped. I waited. She didn't continue. Maybe what? I asked, finally. She shook her head. Forget it. But I couldn't. That night, she reached for my hand in bed. Held it. No words. I stared at the ceiling, feeling her fingers around mine. Warm. Familiar. But somehow, it felt like goodbye. Not the loud kind. The kind that happens in silence. In the spaces between what we say and what we mean. The scent hit me again in the hallway. Not hers. Not the old one. Something sharper. Lighter. Citrus with a cut. I stared at her scarf, still hanging where she left it. And the memory came back. Late winter. A rooftop bar. Before the lies. Before the silence between us calcified into ritual. She'd leaned in, shivering. I hate February, she said, wrapping my coat tighter around her. Then let's pretend it's spring. I remember saying that. Back then, I thought it was romantic. She'd laughed into her drink. You always say that. Back then, it sounded sweet. Now, it sounds like a pattern. A way of skipping the truth. Back in the present, I stood by the window. Hands in my pockets. Watching nothing. She walked in behind me. Barefoot. Quiet. Ethan, she said, voice cautious. I turned, slowly. The look on her face wasn't guilt. Wasn't warmth either. Just, waiting. What? I asked. Soft. Flat. She stepped closer. I've been thinking, maybe we need to stop pretending. Pretending. I almost laughed. Almost said, you always say that. But I didn't. Because now I wasn't sure who she was pretending for. Me, or herself. Instead, I said, okay. She blinked. Surprised. Expected a fight. Or a wound. But I gave her silence. And that seemed to scare her more. She nodded. Walked away. That night, we didn't hold hands. Didn't speak. Didn't sleep. Only silence. And the ghost of a memory, rewritten. I didn't plan it. Didn't set a trap. But when things rot long enough, the truth starts leaking through on its own. It started with a sound. That subtle, ticking sound. His watch. My watch. The one I left in her drawer a year ago, the day I moved in, back when I still believed in permanence. Now it was strapped to Daniel's wrist. Same scratch by the crown. Same engraving inside. I didn't say anything. Just watched him pour coffee like it was any other morning. Like the world hadn't shifted half an inch. We were alone. That was rare. He looked up, finally noticing. What? I waited a beat. Then, where'd you get that watch? He blinked. Glanced down. Casual, but not fast enough. This? It was lying around. Figured you didn't want it. You figured that? Another pause. 2 seconds. Maybe 3. Then he tried to smile. It's just a watch, Ethan. I nodded. It was. Until you wore it. Something in his posture changed. Tiny, but real. I didn't follow it up. Didn't need to. Silence did more damage than shouting ever could. That night, I found her in the kitchen. She didn't ask why I was quiet. Didn't ask what I saw. Which told me everything. I said one thing before walking out. You should have let it stay in the drawer. She left the drawer open. Maybe on purpose. Maybe not. Inside, the empty spot where my watch used to be. Beside it, a folded photo of the three of us from last winter. I didn't even know she kept it. She was standing by the counter when I walked in. Barefoot. Sweater sleeves pulled over her hands like she used to. Her voice came soft. Too soft. It didn't mean anything. I let her speak. Let her circle it. You'd already pulled away, Ethan. I didn't know how to reach you. He was just. I waited. She couldn't finish the sentence. Because we both knew the truth. He wasn't just anything. He was the proof of everything she didn't say. She stepped forward. I was going to tell you. I looked at her. Really looked. You already did. Just not with words. She opened the drawer again. Pulled out the photo, held it like it meant something now. We were still us, she whispered. Even then. I walked over. Took the photo from her hands. Slid it back into the drawer. Closed it. You should have let it stay closed. Then I turned, and left. No slammed doors. No final scream. Just the soft click of a drawer shutting on a memory that wouldn't stop ticking. Grief doesn't come loud. It comes in quiet habits. The way I still check my wrist when I pass the mirror. The way I leave one side of the bed untouched, even when I know she won't come back. That night, I didn't sleep. Didn't drink. Didn't scream. I opened the drawer again. Slow. Careful. Like it might bite. The photo was still there. Folded neat. But the air around it felt different now. Like the memory it held had been recast, and I was the only one who noticed. The space where the watch once rested, empty. Not just in object, but in weight. She took it thinking it was a memory. But for me, it was a record. That watch had been with me through every quiet war. Every night she said she was working late. Every pause before she kissed me like her mouth forgot the shape of my name. Now it was on his wrist. And I didn't even need to see it to know. I sat on the edge of the bed. Looked at the photo again. Her smile. His hand on my shoulder. Mine, slightly turned away. It was always there. The tilt. The gap. The unspoken knowing. We just chose not to see it. Until now. I placed the photo back. Closed the drawer for the last time. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't grief anymore. It was precision. It was silence sharpening into intent. I ran into Daniel in the lobby of his office tower. He smiled, the kind that's been practiced. Polished. Boardroom slick. The kind that says, I've already won. Didn't expect to see you here, he said. Tone light. Eyes calculating. I smiled back. Not too wide. Just enough to pass as polite. Just in the area, I said. Thought I'd drop something off. Truth, in pieces. The envelope in my hand wasn't thick. Just one photo. The same one I'd tucked away all these years. Only now, it had a date written in red. He didn't ask what was inside. But I watched the flicker in his gaze as I placed it in the receptionist's tray. Nothing dramatic. No threats. No shouting. Just a moment, stretched. He adjusted his cuff, left wrist. Where my watch now lived. And that was enough. Later that night, I texted her. I saw him today. She said. You shouldn't be doing this to yourself. I said. I'm not. She replied. Then what do you want? I let the screen go dark. The answer wasn't for her anymore. It never really was. In the kitchen, I poured a glass of water. Didn't drink it. Just held it, staring at the single envelope I had left. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was erosion. Slow. Silent. Unstoppable. The first crack always looks like nothing. Until the structure gives way. The first time Daniel noticed it, he brushed it off. A file misplaced. An intern giving him the wrong draft. His assistant not looping him in on an email thread. Small things. Forgettable, if they happen once. But they didn't. By the third slip, he started asking questions. Did you send the numbers to finance? Yes, sir. Ethan said to include them in his report. Silence. He didn't flinch. Not outwardly. But the name landed like a cough in a quiet room. Ethan. He hadn't worked here in years. Didn't even belong in their system anymore. Still, there it was. Spoken like routine. Daniel nodded. Right. Thanks. He waited until the intern left. Then turned slowly, as if the air had thickened behind him. That evening, during drinks with the board, he laughed too loudly at a joke no one made. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for his glass. When the topic shifted to internal security protocols, his gaze flicked, too fast, to the elevator. No one noticed. Except Claire. She didn't say anything. Just watched him for a moment longer than necessary. The same way you watch someone who's not entirely in the room anymore. Elsewhere, I was already 3 steps ahead. I hadn't broken in. I hadn't hacked a thing. All I did was update my name in the alumni newsletter's digital contributor list. 1 line. Buried beneath 40 others. A corporate ghost in the footer of the page. But in a world where paranoia is currency, you don't need a gun. Just suggestion. He saw the listing 2 days later. A routine keyword alert on his name flagged the newsletter. And there I was, beneath his company's name. Unlinked, unexplained. He clicked it. Dead link. No author bio. No publication history. No recent activity. Just a name. Mine. That night, he called someone. Low voice. Tense tone. I watched the surveillance footage from my end. No audio, but I didn't need it. You learn a lot from the way a man grips his phone. Like he's holding on to certainty? And it's slipping. I didn't hear her come in. Just the soft click of the door, followed by the hush of heels on concrete. Rooftop access wasn't public. Not anymore. But somehow, she was already standing there. Near the railing. Backlit by dusk. Claire. She didn't turn when I approached. Didn't ask why I'd returned. Didn't question how I'd gotten past security. Didn't mention the alarm I'd disabled downstairs, the one I'd once installed myself. Instead, she said, "You still wear it?" I looked down. The watch. Same leather strap. Same engraving. The second hand ticked offbeat, slightly. Just like I remembered. Not for the time, I said. She gave a short, breathless laugh. No, never was. Silence stretched between us. A warm wind curled past the buildings, tousling the edge of her coat. She didn't shiver. Neither did I. She finally turned. He's unraveling. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a warning. It was permission. I nodded once. I know. There were 1,000 things I could have asked her. When did she stop believing him? What was real between them? Was I ever anything more than a collateral regret? But I didn't ask. Because part of growing teeth is learning when to bite, and when to let silence do the damage. He still thinks he can contain it, she said. Control the fallout. He can't, I replied. She studied me then, really studied me. Eyes tracing over the exhaustion. The restraint. The version of me she hadn't met yet, because she'd left before this one was born. You're different, she said quietly. I had to be. I moved to the edge of the roof. Looked down at the city that had buried us both. Below us, the same street where she'd once walked away. Where I'd watched her disappear. Funny how it hadn't changed. Only we had. She came and stood beside me. Why now? She asked. Because the final domino was ready. Because I'd built every failure into a blueprint. Because Daniel thought the worst thing I could do was expose him. But the truth? The worst thing I could do was make him doubt himself. I met her eyes. Because he's already looking over his shoulder. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because that was when she smiled. I found it tucked deep in a backup drive. Buried under decoy folders, old invoices, encrypted archives. Not labeled by name. Not by date. Just a single file with a title that meant nothing, until it did. I almost didn't open it. Thought it might be another trap, another breadcrumb Daniel left behind to test loyalty. But something about it felt unfinished. Like a confession too scared to bleed. The cursor blinked at the top of the screen. I didn't breathe as I read. Claire. If you're reading this, I either lost control, or finally admitted that I never had it. I told myself I did what I had to. That loyalty meant sacrifice. That betrayal was just the cost of vision. But sometimes I wake up choking on that word, betrayal. And it tastes like your name. I keep seeing his face. Not the rage. Not the fall. The silence, afterward. Like something holy had been broken. I used to believe Ethan would forgive me. Eventually. But I think I was counting on you to make that happen. It stopped there. No sign-off. No timestamp. Just a blinking cursor, waiting. I sat with it. This half-born apology. This thing he never had the spine to send, yet couldn't delete. And in that moment, something shifted. Not because I forgave him. But because I understood the one thing he feared most. Not exposure. Not consequence. But irrelevance. He wanted to be the story center. Even as the villain. And I wasn't going to give him that. I copied the draft to my phone. Sent a screenshot to Claire. No message. No context. Just proof that even in his silence, he was begging for someone else to carry his guilt. I wouldn't. And neither would she. It started quiet. Not with sirens or headlines. Just a string of unscheduled withdrawals. A gap in a ledger that didn't line up. A name that shouldn't have been there. By the time I walked into the office, the silence had weight. No glass broke. No one screamed. But you could feel it. The moment when faith slips through the floorboards. Daniel wasn't at his desk. Neither was Samira. Only Alina remained, staring at her screen like it had called her a liar. The Cayman wire transfer, she said without looking up. It cleared last night. I said nothing. You didn't authorize it, she added, her voice flat. Did you? I stepped closer. She finally turned. Something in her eyes had snapped. Not panic. Not rage. Clarity. This isn't embezzlement, I said quietly. It's collapse by design. Whose design? She asked. His. Alina's hand hovered over the keyboard, then dropped. You're not surprised, she said. No. And you're still here. I met her gaze. I didn't come to save the company. Her laugh was a small, bitter thing. Then I hope you came to bury it. I nodded once. And pulled out the drive. By noon, the press had the full package. Internal emails. Shell company trails. Voice clips. Time-stamped edits. Not from me directly. But leaked through a very specific proxy. One who owed Daniel everything. And would burn the world just to owe him nothing. By sunset, the board had dissolved. By midnight, the regulators swarmed in. And somewhere in that crumbling skyline, Daniel watched his legacy go up in smoke. Not from a knife in the back. Not from sabotage. But from truth that wouldn't stay buried. Claire texted me one word. Done. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. We didn't meet after it all fell apart. No rooftop rendezvous. No whispered reconciliation. Just silence. And the sound of something heavy shifting inside me. Claire had disappeared again. Not as a tactic, not this time. She was done playing shadow games. Done needing me to watch her walk away. She was letting go. Which meant I had to decide what that meant for me. I found her scent again, faint, on the old scarf she'd left in my apartment. Buried in a drawer. Still sharp. Still hers. I sat with it for hours. Not because I missed her, but because I needed to remember who I had been before she came back. Before the lies. Before the collapse. Before I started mistaking revenge for recovery. The headlines kept rolling in. The fund was under federal investigation. Samira was cooperating. Daniel had vanished. Some said Dubai. Others, somewhere colder. But I knew better. He wasn't running. He was waiting. Not for redemption, but for the moment someone would try to drag him back into the light. He'd always been that way. Alina left the city. She didn't tell me where. Just one line in a voicemail. Don't build your next chapter in the ruins of this one. I sat on that rooftop one last time. Same bench. Same view. But everything had changed. I didn't bring the watch. Didn't light a cigarette. Didn't wait for anyone to join me. I just listened to the wind. And let myself feel hollow. Not broken. Not victorious. Just emptied. That was the price. Not destruction. Not vengeance. Just the space where those things used to live. It doesn't end with forgiveness. That's the lie they sell you. That once the truth is out, once the villains fall, you get peace. You don't. You get quiet. And if you're lucky, you learn how to live in it. Months passed. No rooftop. No news from Claire. No reappearance from Daniel. Just routine. I'd wake up early. Work. Run. Try to sleep without needing closure. I stopped checking my phone like she might still text. Stopped replaying conversations that never ended right. Stopped needing to win. That was new. The city moved on faster than I did. The fund collapsed. Another scandal replaced it. New names in the headlines. New villains to hate. But some wounds never trend. Some betrayals never go viral. Some ghosts just haunt quietly, from the inside out. Then one morning, the scarf was gone. I didn't throw it out. Didn't lose it. It just wasn't there. Like she'd finally left the last room in my mind. I didn't panic. Didn't tear the apartment apart. I just stood there. And let it mean something. You can't reclaim the person you were before betrayal. You outgrow him. Or bury him. But if you're lucky, you build someone better from the bones. Someone who doesn't need revenge to feel worthy. Someone who can lose and still keep his dignity. Someone who doesn't wait on rooftops anymore.